Okay, class. So here is the actual C++ code that we're going to run and actually create for the problem statement that we have been given. And one of the things that I want to show you is in the program folder that we have, which is right here. So here's my program folder. I'll bring it over here so you can see it. Here's the program folder. Inside the program folder is the input-output file, the IPO charts, the flow charts, and then here is the program file, and then the program file that is created for the actual program. So inside the program folder is where we're going to find the indata.txt file, and it is set up exactly the way it's supposed to be. So we have Giselle Robinson Accounting, Giselle Robinson Accounting. Line number 2 is 5600, 530. So 5600, 5 and 30. 450 and 9, 450 and 9 on line 3. And then line 4 is the 75 and the 1.5. 75 and 1.5. All right, so when the program runs, it's actually going to create an outdata.txt file that's going to be stored in this folder as well. And I'm going to delete this here so that when it runs again, after we've walked through the code, you'll actually see that file here in this folder be created. So let's go back and look at the code. Always start name it, date it, claim it comments. So basically there's my name, date, the name of the application, and then the purpose. So the purpose is going to bring the data in from an external file, process the data, and then output the data to an external file. Actually, it's output the information to the external file. So we've learned that there are several elements, particularly at least 10 elements to a C++ file. First element is always going to be the preprocessor. In this case, because we are working with input-outputs, we need the preprocessor for IO stream. Because we're working with double data types, and because we're working with decimals, because we're working with money, we need to include the IO manip preprocessor. This is going to allow us to format those decimals to show those two decimal places. Now, because we are working with last name, first name, and department, those are all strings, we need to include the string preprocessor. And then this week we learned about the new fstream preprocessor, and that allows us to work with files, both external files bringing data in and external files to outputting the information to an external file. So the preprocessor for that is fstream. All right. Element number 2. Element number 2 is the namespace. We're going to use the standard library namespace so that we don't have to type std : in front of every cin, cout, and endl, which is all a part of the IOStream preprocessor. This is the guy that I say allows us to work smarter and not harder. All right, next, element number 3. Because we don't have any constants, we can move straight to initializing the main module. Technically, element number 3 should be the, number 3 is actually the constants, if you have any. And here we don't. So that's why we're not using element number 3 here as the constants, okay? So our next element is initialize the main module. When we initialize the main module, the next thing we have to do is we have to declare our variables and declare whether we have any input or output files. And in this case, we do have an input-output file. So we're going to declare the input file, so ifstream, as infile, and then the output file as ofstream, and then identify it as outfile. So that is going to be the names that we're going to use in our C++ file to identify that we've got an in file and we've got an out file. It's no different than identifying the variable name for string and then the variable name, or the data type string, and then the variable name that goes with it. So we're just identifying that we are going to use an input file, so if stream, and then I name it. Output file, of stream, and then I name it. Next comes our actual local variables. Our local variables are simple. We have 3 strings, one for the first name, one for the last name, one for the department. Notice how I'm using the camel case nomenclature. Everything's lowercase except for the first letter of each new word. In the second group of variables that we're going to use, that is the one for the gross salary, and we're going to store it as a double because it does have a decimal place. We're going to store bonus as a double because it's going to have a decimal place. We're going to store tax rates as a double because it's going to have a decimal place. And then we're going to calculate the paycheck, and we're going to store it as a double because it's going to have a decimal place as well. In the next group, we are going to assign a variable to hold the distance traveled, and I'm going to save that as a decimal because there's an opportunity for there to be a decimal. The time traveled, again, there's an opportunity for there to be a decimal, so I'm going to store it as a double. And then the average speed, again, because I'm going to calculate the average speed by taking the distance traveled divided by the travel time, I'm going to store this as a double because there's an opportunity for a decimal. And again, notice how we're using the camel case nomenclature. If there's more than 2 words, everything's lowercase except for the first letter in the second word, or each new word, and like in this case. Number of coffee cups sold. Everything's lowercase except for the first letter of every new word. So coffee, cup, sold is all capital letters. All right, now we're going to store the number of coffee cups sold as an integer because you can't sell half a cup of coffee. So it's going to be a whole number. There are no opportunities for decimals. So we're going to store that as an integer. The coffee cost, because again, we're working with decimals, we're going to store that as a double. Total sales, again, we're working with money, so we're working with decimals, dollars and cents. We're going to store that as a double as well. So those are all of the variables that we're going to use in this problem statement and creating the solution for this program. All right, next. Because we are using an input file and an output file, we have to open those files and actually name the file that we're going to open, as well as name the file that we're going to open for the output file. So infile.open says take this in file that I just named up here and open it, and then the file that I'm going to open is the file that is in data.txt. And again, that is this file right here. We've created it, and it's going to open, it's going to go and it's going to find this file, and it's going to open this file right here. Next, we're going to create and open the out file so that I can actually pass all of the variables and all of the data and turn it into information in that output file. So I need to open it first, and then I need to name it. So it's going to be outfile.open, and then the name of the file. And I'm going to name it outdata.txt. All right. Element number 6. This is the formatting of this is the formatting of the decimals. Anytime we have a double data type, and we've got plenty of them here, we need to be able to format that data so that it shows the decimal place and it shows 2 places, or however extra many places that you want. Because we're working with dollars and cents, and because we're working with percentages, I want to show 2 decimal places after the decimal. So we're going to use the out file as the keyword. So we're going to take the out file. We're going to use fixed, show point, and set precision to 2 to show those 2 decimal places. This line, element number 6, is always going to be included in your code when you're working with double data types. Finally, we're getting to the executable code with the inline comments. So now we're back to our algorithm. This is the logical series of steps the computer must take to complete the task. Well, the first thing in this task that we've got to do is we've got to bring the data in from the in file and store it in our variables in our program, in our C++ program, so that we can then process them. So to bring them in, instead of doing a cin from the user and allowing them to input it, we're bringing it in from that external file. So we're going to get from the in file the first line. And in the first line, that represents the variable for the first name, last name, and then the department. Then I'm going to get the data from the second line in the text file. So again, this says go to the second line, bring in the data from the second line, and that's going to be the gross salary, the bonus, and the tax rates. Now that I have all the pieces in the parts, I can calculate the paycheck. So the paycheck is going to take the gross salary times 1 plus the bonus divided by 100 times 1 minus the tax rate divided by 100. So that's going to calculate our paycheck, and that's how that is written. Now that I've calculated the paycheck, I can output all of this information to my external file. So out file is where we use, when we're outputting to the screen, we would use cout here. We set up the output exactly the same way as if we were using cout. We're using out file to tell C++ to send this to that out file that's going to be called outdata.txt. And this says, in the first line, give me a label that says name with a colon and a space. Concatenate first name, concatenate the space between, concatenate the last name, concatenate a string of text that's going to include a comma right after the last name. Notice there's no space there. Then I have a space, and then the label for the department, the colon, the space, and the quote. So that's the label for there. And then I'm going to concatenate and output the variable that holds that, which is the department variable. And then finally, last but not least, I'm going to concatenate and end the line. In the next line, so this is going to be line 1, this is going to be line 2. Line 2 says, I'm going to have a label that says monthly gross salary with a colon, a space, and a $sign. Concatenates, output the data that is in the variable gross salary. Concatenates, and then output a string of text that includes a comma right after the numbers with a space, monthly bonus, colon, and space. Concatenate, output the data that's in the variable bonus. Concatenates, string of text, so after the number there'll be a %, a comma space, and then the word taxes, colon, space. And that's the end of that label. Concatenate, output the data that's in the variable tax rate. Concatenates, output a % symbol after the number. So it'll be 30% symbol, and concatenate and end the line. Line number 3. Line number 3 is the actual output of the paycheck. So I'm going to have a label that says paycheck with the colon, space, $sign. Concatenate. This is the variable that is holding the paycheck that's just been calculated up here. Concatenate, end the line, concatenate, end the line, end the line. And the processing of the line is what that semicolon represents. And this is going to give me 2 spaces after the output of line number 3. Next in our algorithm, we're going to get the data from line number 3 so that we can then calculate the average speed. So from the in file, I'm going to bring distance traveled And